Irwin Allen was one of the most successful TV producers and creators of popular science fiction fantasy on TV. He had two successful shows on air, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and Lost in Space. He came up with another exciting idea for a show about time travel. The Time Tunnel was a very costly production for 20th Century Fox. After extensive preparation by Allen, The Time Tunnel premiered on television from 1966 to 1967 and lasted for just one season. It was loosely inspired by the 1964 film The Time Travelers. This production was said to be the favorite of Allen's out of all four of his shows. The show starred scientists Tony Newman, James Darren, and Doug Phillips, played by Robert Colbert, who are in charge of a top-secret multi-billion-dollar US government organization known as Project Tick-Tock. The installation is 800 floors underground, below the Arizona desert. They invented a time machine known as the Time Tunnel, which will allow people to visit anywhere in time and space. Assisting Tony and Doug are Dr. Anne McGregor, Lee Merriweather, who is an electrobiologist, and Dr. Raymond Swain, John Zarimba, an expert in electronics, and Lieutenant General Haywood Kirk, played by veteran character actor Whit Bissell. United States Senator Leroy Clark, Gary Merrill, comes to investigate the installation to determine if the $7.5 billion being spent is worth it. He sees the project as a waste of government funds. He gives them an ultimatum to send a person through time, or this project will be cut from the budget and cease. Tony volunteers to be the first one sent through time, but Doug turns him down. Tony defies this decision and sends himself into time. Doug follows shortly after to rescue him, but they both are trapped in time together. The senator returns to Washington with the promise that the funding will not be cut off from the project. The general is left in charge with Dr. McGregor and Dr. Swain scanning and watching Tony and Doug's every move as they travel from one time to another as they try to get Tony and Doug back. The stage is set for the progress of the series as Tony and Doug are now switched from one period in history to another, allowing episodes to be set in the past and future. Each episode up to episode 24 begins with the following narration, voiced by Dick Tuffield, also known for his narration and voice for the robot on Lost in Space.
Two American scientists are lost in the swirling maze of past and future ages during the first experiments on America's greatest and most secret project, the Time Tunnel. Tony Newman and Doug Phillips now tumble helplessly toward a new fantastic adventure, somewhere along the infinite corridors of time.
The series is set in 1968, 2 years into the future of the actual broadcast season, 1966 to 1967. Tony and Doug became participants of notable past events, like the sinking of the Titanic, the attack on Pearl Harbor, the eruption of Krakatoa, Custer's Last Stand, and the Battle of the Alamo, among others.
I couldn't wait for what might happen next week. Script-wise, something come in, we would travel to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, or whatever it might be.
General Kirk, Ray, and Anne in the control room are able to locate them in time and space, observe them, communicate with them through voice contact, and send help.
I was always there fixing it. I think I probably made more mistakes than anyone else on the show as far as losing them and not being able to track them.
The Time Tunnel also has the power to relocate persons from time to another time, bringing people other than Tony and Doug back to the future. But the only occasion in which Tony and Doug return to their own time occurs in Merlin the Magician, when the great wizard uses magic to bring them home in suspended animation so that he may instruct them to perform a mission for him. In the course of the series, Doug, Tony, and the Time Tunnel personnel discover that events of the past can be altered to some extent by the intrusion of the time travelers, and in few cases, their historical research allows for it. The series was suddenly cancelled in the summer of 1967 by ABC. Unfortunately for our characters, Tony and Doug, they were forever lost in the corridors of time and space. They had not filmed an episode in which they safely returned to the present. Robert Colbert, who plays Doug Phillips, appeared in a number of minor films, but had more work on TV. He was contracted at Warner Brothers on Western TV shows like Colt 45 and Cheyenne. Due to James Garner leaving the show Maverick to pursue a movie career, Warner Brothers wanted Robert Colbert to play the role of Brent Maverick. The studio wanted to cast him in the show because he looked so much like James Garner, and to dress exactly like Garner did. Colbert famously said to his bosses, "Put me in a dress and call me Brenda, but don't do this to me." Colbert played his part in 2 episodes and was not called back for the following season, since the studio decided to alternate new episodes featuring only Brett and Brent's brother, Bart Maverick. Colbert even did promo shots with the Maverick co-star Roger Moore, but never got to co-star with him. He starred in countless other television shows before getting the role as Doug Phillips in The Time Tunnel. After his work on The Time Tunnel, he appeared in the final episode of the first season of Hawaii Five-0. Colbert also appeared as the character Stuart Brooks on the television soap opera The Young and the Restless from March 1973 to March 1983. James Darren, who played Tony on The Time Tunnel, began his career as a teen idol who was contracted at Columbia, starring in a number of forgettable films. He starred in the popular film Gidget, playing Moondoggie alongside Sandra Dee in 1959. He even had a string of pop hits for Colpix Records. His biggest hit was Goodbye Cruel World, that went number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1961. It sold over 1 million copies and was awarded a gold disc. Darren was wanting to be taken more seriously as an actor. He was sick of starring as the usual teen heartthrob in films like Gidget Goes to Rome, a role he hated and didn't want to do. Darren said, "The people handling my career at that point didn't really take advantage of it. I did another Gidget film, which I hated. I thought that I would be doing those for the rest of my life." To try to break out of his teen image, he starred in the gritty war classic The Guns of Navarone in 1961. He starred alongside legendary actors like Gregory Peck, Anthony Quinn, and David Niven. He was very proud of his work in this film and stated, "When you're in a classic film like that, it lasts forever." He signed a 7-picture deal with Universal in 1963, starting with the film The Lively Set. He was the singing voice of Yogi Bear in the animated film Hey There, It's Yogi Bear in 1964. Prior to that, he was the singing voice of his own character, Jimmy Darroch, on an episode of The Flintstones. Even doing voices on cartoons, he could never shake that teen idol image. He then achieved success, co-starring as impulsive scientist and adventurer Tony Newman on the science fiction series The Time Tunnel. Later, James Darren had a regular role as Officer James Corrigan on the television police drama T.J. Hooker from 1983 to 1986. Subsequently, he worked as a director on many action-based series, including Hunter, The A-Team, The Brilliant Underrated Nowhere Man, as well as dramas such as Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place. Whit Bissell, who plays General Hayward Kirk on The Time Tunnel, is a veteran character actor, starring in many films, including the fantasy and horror films I Was a Teenage Werewolf in 1957, and Professor Frankenstein in I Was a Teenage Frankenstein, also in 1957. He also played the attending psychiatrist who treats the protagonist, Dr. Miles Bennell, played by Kevin McCarthy, in Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 1956, and appeared in Creature from the Black Lagoon in 1954. He also appeared on TV in shows like The Lone Ranger, Peyton Place, Perry Mason, The Rifleman. He appeared in the classic episode of Star Trek, The Trouble with Tribbles. Bissell portrayed The Undertaker, who sees every man, no matter his race, as just another future customer in the film The Magnificent Seven. In 1960, Bissell had appeared in George Powell's production of The Time Machine as Walter Kemp, one of the time traveler's dining friends. He also appeared in a 1978 TV movie adapting the H.G. Wells novel for a more modern setting. Actress Lee Merriweather, who plays Dr. Anne McGregor on The Time Tunnel, is mostly well known as Catwoman in the 1966 Batman movie. She also appeared in 2 episodes of the Batman TV series in 1967 as Lisa Carson, a love interest to Bruce Wayne in the episodes King Tut's Coup and Batman's Waterloo. She has appeared in countless TV shows and movies like The 4D Man, playing Linda Davis, starring alongside Robert Lansing in 1959. She starred in The Lloyd Bridges Show, Route 66, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Perry Mason, F Troop, and Mission Impossible.
And then there's another one coming up, something about tunnel?
Oh, that's the series.
That's television.
I'm on a series starting in September on Friday nights at 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a marvelous science fiction
Well, that sounds
thriller.
fun.
And
Do you like all of this then?
adventure. Oh, yes.
Good.
She starred alongside Andy Griffith, playing his wife Lee for the short-lived series The New Andy Griffith Show in 1971. In the 1980s, Merriweather portrayed Lily Munster in the 1988-1991 revival of the 1960s television show The Munsters, titled The Munsters Today. There were a number of well-known actors starring in guest roles on The Time Tunnel, some before they were famous. Michael Rennie, famous for his role in the science fiction classic The Day the Earth Stood Still, and the role of the Keeper in the double episode The Keeper on Irwin Allen's other hit show Lost in Space. He starred in the first Time Tunnel episode, Rendezvous with Yesterday, as the captain of the ill-fated Titanic, before she was known as the frightened mother of the possessed daughter in 1973's The Exorcist. Actress Ellen Burstyn appeared in the episode Crack of Doom. A young Tom Skerritt appeared in the episode The Death Trap. Of course, he went on to star in the science fiction horror classic Alien in 1979. Actor Robert Duvall appeared in the episode Chase Through Time. He, of course, went on to star in The Godfather, becoming one of the most respected actors today. Cult actor John Saxon starred as Marco Polo in the episode Attack of the Barbarians. Classic character actor Michael Ansara appeared in The Kidnappers as an alien. He starred in a number of films and mostly TV. He played a Klingon in the original series of Star Trek. Before Irwin Allen's fourth show, Land of the Giants, actress Heather Young appeared in The Time Tunnel. The production used sets and props left over from the large number of period dramas made by the 20th Century Fox Film Company. There were many storyboards drawn up to prepare for this massive production. Only one set was constructed for the show, that of the Time Tunnel main control room.
Would go to any length to make it look exactly like what the storyboard was. So when I saw what Irwin had storyboarded, and then eventually saw this incredible set, which was exactly like the storyboard, but grand, of course, it was breathtaking. It helped you in your character. You fantasized and you were there.
For the pilot episode, a large control room set was built, and a longer time tunnel was created using optical matte shots. At the time of its production from 1966 to 1967, this series was the most expensive TV show ever produced by any studio. The Time Tunnel complex took up 2 huge sound stages at 20th Century Fox.
It was enormous. It took 2 sound stages. It had a hypnotic effect, and just as the characters were drawn into the tunnel and taken back into time or forward into time, so was the audience.
After the pilot episode, location changes occurred for the production of the series. Colbert and Darren shot their scenes in another studio, on the 20th Century Fox backlot, or on location, while those who portrayed the Time Tunnel personnel filmed all their scenes on revised and smaller Time Tunnel control room set. Many episodes made extensive use of stock footage from the 20th Century Fox film library, which allowed producer Irwin Allen to do shows against an epic backdrop that could not have been done on a television budget. Only a few actors were costumed for a given episode, interspersed with cuts of great masses of people similarly dressed from original features. Some episodes featured space aliens who wore costumes and carried props originally created for other Irwin Allen productions. The props used in this show, such as the computers, were reused to cut costs. The prop computer looked realistic because it was an array of memory modules from the Air Force's recent decommissioned Sage computer. The props used in this show, such as the computer and the guns, also were used in episodes of Lost in Space, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Land of the Giants, and Batman. The theme song for the Time Tunnel was composed by John Williams, credited as Johnny Williams. Crescendo Records later released an album featuring Williams' work, and the score composed by George Dunning for the episode The Death Merchant. Bernard Herrmann's music from The Day the Earth Stood Still was used in a number of Time Tunnel episodes. His music was also featured in Lost in Space, mainly in the first season. Other composers used for the show were Lynn Murray, Leif Stevens, Paul Sortel, Robert Drasnin, and Joseph Mullendore. In January of 1967, a promotional novel, The Time Tunnel, was published by Pyramid Books. Murray Leinster was the author, who had previously written a novel of the same name in 1964, completely unrelated to the television series. This was followed later in the year by Time Slip, Time Tunnel Adventure, the last novel based on the TV series. There were also 2 issues put out by Gold Key Comics. There were many reoccurring themes on the Time Tunnel. A short teaser from next week's episode was shown at the end of each episode as Doug and Tony arrived at their next destination. In the same manner, Alan ended each episode of Lost in Space. This style was also used in Quantum Leap and Sliders. The impressive introduction to the scale of the project, over 36,000 people and huge underground buildings, is never seen after the first episode, except for 2 clips used over and over of the giant power generator flashing and tunnel security running across a walkway. Some of these shots were homages to the Krell complex from the classic 1956 MGM film Forbidden Planet, but new matte paintings and models were created specifically for the Time Tunnel pilot episode. Most episodes involved the capture or detention of Doug, Tony, or both, their escape, their recapture, and their escape again before their move to the next episode. Nearly all location shooting was filmed in and around Southern California. This causes scenes set in different parts of the country or the world to have the same general hilly landscape with arid type trees and brush typical to the local region where filming occurred. Doug and Tony almost always appeared somewhere in the past. Aliens and people from the future were usually dressed, often in metallic silver clothing, like other Irwin Allen TV series of the same era. Lasting only 1 season, this was the shortest lived of all of Irwin Allen's science fiction series. After a single season of good reviews but mediocre ratings, ABC offered to renew the series if producer Irwin Allen would cut his budget by 1/3. He refused, and the series was cancelled to be replaced in the fall of 1967 by the show Custer. Even though it lasted 1 season, this was Irwin Allen's favourite TV show. Due to the cancellation of the series after 1 season, Doug and Tony never returned home. In the DVD interview, Robert Colbert said that Had the show been renewed for another season, producer Irwin Allen was planning to have the time tunnel finally bring them home, and the new scripts would have them going into the time tunnel each week to fix wrongs that happened in history, much like the show Quantum Leap. In 2002, Fox showed interest in remaking this series. The pilot was produced by 20th Century Fox Television in association with Irwin Allen Properties. Kevin Burns and John Jastny were executive producers. Sheila Allen was credited as one of the producers. The series was not ordered by Fox, so as to make room in its schedule for Joss Whedon's Firefly. The pilot had darker and more serious tone than the original 1966 series of The Time Tunnel. The Sci-Fi Channel announced in 2005 it would create a new pilot for its 2007 season. Allen's wife, Sheila, and two producers of 2002 Fox remake began work on the new pilot. John Turman, Hulk, wrote the script. The series never went beyond a pilot script. Irwin Allen was a genius. His ideas were fresh and new. The Time Tunnel was a fun fantasy adventure, and every week it would transport us to another exciting time in history. The show was innocent and aimed solely at kids. Yes, those kids who watched the show grew up, but still loved the show. I was one of those kids. I started to watch the show in the late 70s. Our family didn't get a colour TV till 1982, so I would watch the episodes on a crappy black and white TV, but it would still inspire my imagination. I would somehow like to imagine Doug and Tony are still travelling through time and space and getting into adventures. My name's JonnyBaak. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos on my channel. And if you like this video, please subscribe.